Hey, what the hell's going on, you guys? It is 2 playing Negative AE. I've went ahead and gotten something to eat, and I am now back. This is kind of the second episode in the same play session. I'm probably going to do maybe one more. I don't know. I'll tell you at the end. It's getting pretty late, so we will see if I'm going to do another one here. I do want to record some other games as well, so I don't know. We'll see. I had a restless night's sleep. I did nothing but turn over repeatedly during a night that seemed like it lasted for eternity. Even then, I eventually fell asleep at some point, not realizing how high in the sky the sun had risen. I shook off the urge to go back to sleep. Phone was ringing. It was then that I noticed the phone was ringing. The time was almost 10:30 in the morning. It was clearly too late for a wake-up call. Waking up to the sound of Oishi's voice was a little too much of a shock. My delicate ears were ringing. But thanks to that shock, I was suddenly wide awake.
ああ、おはようございます。
ひょっとして今お目覚めですか。出張中とはいえ勤務時間には起きないといけませんよ。
まったくです。以後、気をつけます。
あなたの眠気をもう一つ覚ましてあげられるかもしれない話があります。
You know what I also realized?
南沢駐在所から届いた遺失物に興味深いものが混じっていたんです。
遺失物
Hold on. They're about to drop a bomb.
詳しい話はこちらにいらっしゃってからにしましょう。お昼前に来れますか。
いえ、すぐに伺います。
Oishi already knew what my mission was. Since Oishi said it was something that would wake me up, it was hard to believe that it would be irrelevant to me. Honestly speaking, judging by the information from Sato-san yesterday, knowing that my cover was already blown, I couldn't wander to and from Hinamizawa carelessly. In other words, my investigation was at an impasse. There was some information that could put me back on the trail that would be nothing less than a stroke of good fortune. After vigorously washing my face, I pulled on my jacket and hailed a taxi heading towards the Ukinomiya police station.
おお、来た来た。天才ジャンシ様の到着だ。
で、一体何が出たんですか？
With absolutely no intention of reminiscing about last night's Mahong game, I pressed him to get to the point. Oishi, anticipating that I would act that way, cut to the chase without any resistance.
先ほども申し上げましたが、今朝、ひなみ沢の駐在所から遺失物が届きました。
Lost items that were turned over to the police box were sent to Okinomiya Police Station after the paperwork was filled out. Oishi pulled out a plastic bag from the drawer and laid its labeled contents on the desk.
財布です。
でしょうな。中には小銭はあってもお札はなかったもんなんで、スリが中身を抜いた後に捨ててったのかななんと、最初は。
I didn't understand how this wallet, so far removed from Tokyo, could possibly be related to the kidnapping. If it had drawn Oishi's attention, it would have to be something dramatic, like if the wallet belonged to the missing grandchild. That would be absurd. Like something that convenient would happen. If that was it, then there were probably initials written on the wallet, like the initials of Toshiki and Nugai, the minister's grandson, T.I. Thinking like that, at this point I didn't suppose that the wallet was something that could get Oishi so excited. Oishi, after putting on a pair of disposable plastic gloves, handed me a pair of the same. I didn't feel like this wallet was such an important thing, so I had my doubts about whether there was any point in putting on the gloves. However, I didn't want Oishi's intentions to go to waste, so I put them on. Oishi opened up the plastic bag and pulled it out, showing me the bag. Initials engraved there, but slightly more detailed than what I had thought. Toshiki I marked on. Oishi grinned at me with a look on his face that said, "See? Can't confirm that this belongs to the minister's grandson," I informed him calmly. This wallet was irrelevant. It was nothing more than Oishi's over-eagerness. First of all, there was absolutely no way in this distant locale that the missing grandson's wallet would be found with such convenient timing. After all, the Onagafuchi Defense Alliance wasn't related to the case in the first place. Wait, where's he getting that information? Why I want to decide that I really didn't even know, even though what should have been a top secret case was leaked before I had even been dispatched. In this situation, how could I say that this was definitely unrelated? Would it be more prudent to pay more attention to this wallet? It had only been a couple of days since I arrived in Hinamizawa, but in those couple of days, due to the number of remarkable events, my nerves might have become just a little frayed. Shaking my head slightly, I cleared it of unnecessary thoughts. Uishi opened the wallet zipper, revealing the contents. Inside was small change and a number of crumpled receipts. Uishi, from that jumble, pulled out a folded card. Seeing that, my heart stopped for a moment. It was a card from a dental examination. The name Toshiki Inugai and the age. A perfect match. Dentist's location was in Tokyo. There was no need to explain any further. How far was it from Tokyo to Hinamizawa? It was far enough that taking the bullet trains and cars would still take several hours. Why would a wallet with dental examination card from Tokyo show up in Hinamizawa? It belonged to it. What the fuck? Why is this man against the idea that it's the Onagafuchi Defense Alliance? You just met these people. And that guy was telling you all about how they knew everything and how they didn't necessarily say that they kidnapped the kid, but they could have. And now you're seeing pure evidence that it can, and you're like, what? How could this be? Could a tourist have done it? It's as if it just wanted a wallet. This wouldn't do for this wallet to belong to him. However, weeding out any possibility for error one by one, the haze surrounding the wallet in front of me faded, gradually letting it come clear into focus. The shiver of electricity ran up my spine. My pulse quickened and a thin film of sweat began to coat my entire body. From Uishi's point of view, I was probably just slack-jawed and spaced out with a slovenly look on my face.
問い合わせましたか？
そりゃ赤坂さんの私はまだそこまでは。
この財布はいつ頃のものでしょうね。
拾ったのは村人です。昨日のことだそうで。
じゃなくて、この財布はいつ頃？
ここいらに雨があったのはちょうど先週。中身が水にやられた様子はないから、最長で6日前からでしょうね。
この財布の存在は。初
期対応のひなみ沢駐在所の、それから遺失物対応で係があとは私。内緒の事件と関係があったらまずいでしょう。ベラベラとは喋ってないつもりです。
電話を借りていいですか？
どうぞどうぞ。外線は0発信から。
I dialed the phone number inscribed on the examination card. Oh yeah, I was gonna say before all this bombshell stuff started happening with Oishi, is that I looked at the achievements for this game. It doesn't look like this game is very long at all. Just because normally it takes me a while to get all the achievements in these games. In this one, I only have like a couple hours in it. Well, I mean, I have like almost 10 hours, so like 7-ish hours in it right now, and I'm still not even, I still have like almost all the achievements. So it's like almost done. Like it feels like it's almost ready. And I know that 2 or 3 of the achievements are for like the end of the game. Like one's for reading all the tips, one's for reading the end party, and one's for finishing the last chapter. So and I only have like 2 more achievements to go. Anyway, I could hear my pulse pounding inside my head. Of course, could there be a possibility of something so absurd? The addresses on the receipts and cards inside the wallet were all from around the area where the grandson lived. The name on the examination card was also a match. The time we deduced that the wallet had been left behind also matched up with the timeline of the kidnapping. Of course, it was possible I could just laugh it off as a big pile of coincidences. There wasn't any strong evidence. Rather than all this circumstantial proof, the contents of the phone call I was about to make would have much greater meaning.
はい、お待たせしました。中川歯科です。
どうも。こちらはご協力をいただいてもよろしいでしょうか。お財布の中にそちら様の診察カードが、氏名は犬飼俊樹くんです。カードの番号を申し上げますので、電話番号をお願いできますか。
Still holding the receiver, I pulled out a notebook from my breast pocket with my free hand. I opened it up to the page with the grandson's address and phone number recorded on it.
どうもすみません。はい。お願いします。
I compared the phone number written in my notebook to that one that was being read out on the other end of the line. During that process, I spun around to look behind me uneasily. I locked eyes with Oishi. Oishi looked puzzled, wondering what the matter was. Why would I feel uneasy and look behind me? That was because the person on the other end of the line... Why is this such a big deal? If anything, it's like, alright, call HQ. Like, here we go. Like, that's evidence. It's definitely from this area. So then you can get everybody that's not you over here, right? And do like a full shit. I don't know what the problem is. It seemed that the HQ was in quite an uproar thanks to my report. No matter how many times the authenticity of the evidence I had linked to the grandson was called into question, I could only respond that it was the truth. Whenever the lead investigator first picked up the phone, I was grilled about the evidence I'd found that was almost too good to be true, if I do say so myself. But after having doubt after doubt dispelled, he fell into silence. The receiver was finally handed over to the section chief. When he picked it up, the background thrum on the other end of the line disappeared, and I knew that it had been gone completely silent. After asking the same questions about the wallet that the lead investigator did, the chief quietly spoke his next words.
わかりました。こちらから何人か増援を送ります。
New music? Sounds like space agey. They should be able to make it there by evening.
赤坂君は引き続き現地調査をお願いします。財布が発見された地域の情報を収集しててください。加納さんは何人か選んで現地へ直接。
The fact that he was sending Kanu, the lead investigator here, probably meant that the chief had decided that there was a possibility that the owner of Kofuchi Defense Alliance was somehow implicit in the kidnapping. However, it felt as though until the lead investigator whom he trusted had verified the evidence with his own eyes, he was still going to be skeptical about it.
どうでした？
本庁から増援、私は現地調査を命じられました。財布の落ちていた場所はどこなんです？
高津戸のあたりだそうです。ここが沖宮。ずーっと行ってここがひなみ沢で、さらに上流にぐーっと上がっていくとこの辺が高津戸です。
Rishi explained where the wallet was found by pointing to locations on the map on the wall. This place called Takatsudo was more remote than Hinamizawa was.
高津戸界隈はほとんど民家なんかありませんよ。
There's hardly anybody living in the area around Takatsudo.
昔の廃村です。無人の家屋が点在する。
大石さん、高津戸へ案内してもらうことはできますか？
構いませんよ。赤坂さんお一人ではなかなか自由にひなみ沢に出入りはできない。無論また野球帽とマスクをしてもらうことになりますが。
That Oishi had agreed to accompany me was very reassuring. If such a sense information was to be believed, my cover had been blown. I wasn't sure if the villagers had realized that the fresh meat dispatched from the public safety was the tourist that had visited the village yesterday, in other words, me. But deciding that they hadn't noticed would be overly optimistic. Given a cursory thought, Takatsudo? I don't know. Where the wallet was found couldn't be ruled out as a hiding spot for the kidnappers. The Takatsudo area didn't have any residential buildings, nor was it alongside a highway. There wasn't a reason for the locals to go out of their way to visit it. It was exactly what you would call a long-forgotten ghost town at the end of the road. Couldn't ask for a better place to hold a kidnapped grandson. Also, you couldn't get to Takatsudo without passing through Hinamizawa first. There were several conditions made the area all the more important. Couldn't brush it off any longer. There was no longer any doubt that the Onagafuchi Defense Alliance, or somebody hired by them, were involved in the kidnapping. If that was the case, then the fact that this wallet was found might have already been leaked to them. They even knew so much as to how the Public Safety Division was operating. The case of the wallet couldn't be something they didn't know. In that case, there was a possibility that the enemy was lying in wait. To dive alone into enemy territory surrounded by enemy territory, to say the least, required an amount of courage, nay, recklessness, that I just did not have.
大石さんの同行がなければご協力いただけて正直なところまたお金を要求されるのではと
それは正直を言えばひなみ沢なんか好き運賃でも弾んでもらいたい気分ですがでも一緒にタコを囲んだ友人の頼みとあれば断るわけに
Rishi grinned as he pounded me on the back. It struck me that he just didn't want to jump ship rather than having any sort of sense of duty towards his job. Even so, that really didn't matter. Right now, I really appreciated the gesture.
早速出してもらえますか
The enemy knew that the police had obtained the wallet. They would probably have moved the hostage to a different place. There wasn't a moment to lose. But with Oishi without regard to the fact that we were about to head out, began to remove his jacket.
何を知ってるんですか
まあ用心です家中の栗を拾うなら相応の用意が必要と思いあなたも来ます
Oh, stab-proof vests. Yeah. Yeah, you want those. His name is Toshiki Inugai, the grandson of the Minister of Construction Inugai. There's only one reason for him being here. He didn't include gym or art class. His grades were above average. That was the result of having private tutoring sessions twice a week. If you omitted the fact that he still couldn't do pull-ups, there wasn't much else that would make him hate school. Of course, he understood full well that his grandfather was a cabinet minister. But he also knew that not too many people were that interested in their relationship. He didn't like to go out of his way to bring up his grandfather or to call him the Minister of Construction. And finally, he at least tried to know a little more about what kind of work the Minister of Construction did than your average Joe. What that entailed was that when you tried your best to make your life better for the masses, sometimes you made a few enemies. He knew that all too well from the time he'd spent as a class representative. His grandfather had many enemies. He knew that he might personally catch some of that fallout, so he had to be twice as cautious. He was taught that by his parents. That's why the moment he was kidnapped, he instantly knew that this was one of those occasions. He understood that he wasn't being treated as Toshiki Inugai the person, but rather as Toshiki Inugai the grandson of the Minister of Construction. That he wasn't personally at fault, but that this was some sort of unavoidable trouble with his grandfather's work. It made little difference, but when he realized it wasn't because of anything he did, he was able to relax. Only a little. Of course, at first he was struck with terror befitting his age, wondering what was going to happen to him. But after a while of being tied up and only able to stay lying down, he began to ponder a great many things. First, he thought about the reason he was being abducted like this. He understood the answer to that easily. He was taken hostage to coerce his grandfather, the minister. There was no doubt about that. He didn't know exactly what the Minister of Construction did, but it was easy to imagine that there was much to be gained from threatening him. He respected his grandfather more than most. He earnestly believed that his own grandfather was within the top 20 most important people in Japan. That was exactly why he wouldn't forgive anybody who tried to threaten his beloved grandfather. More importantly, he wouldn't forgive anybody who would use him as a tool to threaten his grandfather. His grandfather was really busy and rarely had time to meet with relatives. That's why, with what little time he did manage to scrape together, he just dropped by unannounced. And as an apology for not being able to meet during New Year's or summer vacation, he doted on his grandson. Very, very much. The number of times that Toshiki was looked upon with disregard just because his grandfather was a politician and a minister certainly weren't few. But he never thought even once that he wanted his grandfather to quit being a politician. Because it was his beloved grandfather. He wanted him to continue his career for as long as possible from the bottom of his heart. However, Toshiki was now being held hostage, and his grandfather was being threatened. His grandfather, who called him the apple of his eye, was surely suffering. He might do anything to save his grandson, maybe even putting aside his ideology if it was required to save his grandson. He might cave in to the culprit's demands if it meant saving his grandson. When Toshiki thought about that, an inexplicable anger welled up within him. In his current situation, he was unable to forgive the cowards who would make his beloved grandfather suffer by using such dastardly means. That feeling swelled up inside of him, displacing the fear. What he thought of first was something any boy would imagine. Get out of these bonds, beat up the bad guys, and then hand them over to the police. Images of all the brave heroes from all the manga he had read, passed through the back of his mind. In his imaginary scenario, he slipped both his bonds easily, floating like a butterfly to evade his captors, and then stinging like a bee to bring them all down. Sure. In the end, it was nothing more than a silly little fantasy. But with his vision obstructed and unable to see anything, it was something he could get into more than any anime at the moment. In actuality, he was enjoying these little scenarios in his head for the long period of time he was tied up. His captors hadn't really done anything to him that they would feel sorry for. However, eventually he began to grow tired of his fantasies, and more realistic scenarios began to run through his head. It was then that he realized none of them were a solution. Yes, he wanted to do something for his grandfather who was being threatened. That he was being held here to inflict pain on his grandfather was the thing that he could least forgive, and also the most vexing. And then he noticed. There was a much simpler way he could save his grandfather without having to beat up his despicable captors. That was to remove himself as a hostage from the hands of these villains. If he was to disappear from here, his captors would have nothing to threaten his grandfather with. His captors had restrained him, but they didn't treat him roughly. They had made sure that he was fed well enough, meaning at most he was nothing more than the means for their threat. They weren't looking to bully him or kill him out of spite. If he behaved, no ill would befall him. Realizing that gave him a strong sense of courage. Carrying that train of thought this far, he let it run its course until its natural conclusion. Right now, at this moment, Toshiki Inugaya had decided to escape. His ears had been stuffed with sponge-like material acting as makeshift earplugs. However, they didn't actually do much to block out any sound, and he could overhear everything his captors were saying. Realizing that this was to his advantage even when his captors spoke to him, he acted like he couldn't hear them due to the earplugs. His captors, thinking that he couldn't hear their conversation, talked about all sorts of things without any reservations. Thanks to that, he was able to obtain various pieces of information. First off, this wasn't Tokyo. Seeing that this was quite a distance away, and on top of that in the countryside, nestled deep in the mountains. It also seemed that his captors were inconvenienced living out here, so he could deduce that this place was far removed from any sort of town. Finally, whenever they went out to buy food or other supplies, they would always take a car. That, in fact, caused him some dismay, because he knew that the method he learned at school of running around blindly while shouting for help wouldn't work here. He paused his little mental escape scenario there. His ultimate goal was to find somebody who would help him. Somebody who fit that description wasn't close by. His chances of escaping successfully grew slim. A desolate, far-off land deep in the mountains. A place where you couldn't even go shopping without using a car. In this situation, escaping would be very difficult. He grew depressed, and after a while, he returned to his original scenario. Imagining becoming a hero like in the manga he had read, and beating down his captors became his respite. However, as he played out those delusions in his head, his heart, hating to surrender, continued to search for a way to escape. Then he thought of a way. If the goal was far away, then all he had to do was get closer. His goal, in a nutshell, was to find somebody who would help him. In other words, somebody other than his captors. If he faked being sick, the captors would have to take him to a hospital or bring a doctor to him. They would probably be reluctant to do that, but he already knew that the hostage was more important than anything. In the off chance something like that happened, like him dying occurred, they wouldn't be able to threaten anybody anymore. Luckily, he had an experience that would help him fake a serious illness. At the end of last year, he was inadvertently involved in a car accident and had to undergo surgery. The scar from that surgery was still clearly visible in his lower torso. He recalled the pain and suffering from that time. The existence of that experience would make a huge impact on the realism of his performance. He was quite confident in his ability to fake an illness. His captors first took that as a sign he needed to use the washroom. Untying only his arms, they tried to bring him there while he was still blindfolded. But he didn't try to get up. His hands now free only clutched at his abdomen as he writhed in agony. Still had his earplugs in, so he had to pretend he didn't hear his captors asking the question. He was about to nod, so he hurriedly had to stop himself. Captors looked down on his suffering form for a bit. One of them proposed a course of action, while the other laid his doubts that Toshiki might be faking it.
そいつ耳を塞いでるから聞こえ参ったんな。腹痛に効く薬なんかあらんね。薬局行って買ってくるか。腹痛って言ったっていろんな薬があるだろう。症状がわからないうちはいい加減な薬は買えないぜ。腹を押さえてるし便秘やん。
What the fuck? He's holding his stomach. Maybe he's just constipated.
便秘薬でも買ってくれば収まるやんね。間違って飲んでも死なんしな。決めつけるなよ。盲腸とかかもしれないだろう。俺のおじさんがさ、あれはかなりビビったぜ。
One of the captors leaned over beds beside the boy who was bent over in agony.
かわいそうにな。全身汗だらけじゃないかよ。腹か痛むのか。おいおい、痛むんならあんまり抑え込んじゃかえって悪いぞ。
Realizing that his captors were concerned about his stomach, he inadvertently let his shirt ride up, letting his scar from the surgery come into plain view. His vision was still obscured from the packing tape, so he couldn't see their reaction to the scar. But his captors were taken aback, judging from their momentary silence. He had obtained the reaction he was looking for.
やばいぜ。この手術跡はそんなに昔のものじゃん。
その小僧、体温計あるん？
あるわけねえよ。でもすごい汗だぜ。おでこは結構熱い。緊張状態が続くとさ、昔の傷なんかに応えたりするって聞いた。
じゃあどうすんよ。 薬じゃ治らんちゅんてんか。
何の手術跡か知らねえけど、とにかくまずいだろ。下手すると命に関わるぜ。
まずいんて。これは本当にまずいんて。
医者に見せた方がいい。このままじゃ突然ぽっくりいっちまう可能性だってあるだろう。
Toshiki Inugai, with those few words, knew that the situation was progressing exactly as he had envisioned it, and snickering to himself on the inside, he pressed the idea even further. He didn't even need to see what his captors were panicked and running around like chickens with their heads cut off at this troublesome turn of events.
診療所連れて行くか。
先生を連れてくる方がいいね。
入江の先生か。いいのか。大丈夫か。
人質に何かあったらまずんね。しゃあない。緊急事態やん。
One of the captors hurriedly left in the car. Another of the men, completely shaken up at this point, had wiped the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. It looked like they were bringing a doctor. As long as the doctor wasn't an accomplice, that doctor was his goal. He was somebody he should seek help from. His captors were probably wary of that happening. They would be prepared for it. This would all come down to luck. Some of the sweat emerging from his brow was from that nervousness. At that moment, the packing tape covering his eyes was torn off. The burning light that he was seeing for the first time in several days hurt his eyes. After that, the gag made it hard for him to breathe was also removed.
大丈夫かこそ。今お医者を連れてくるからな。しばらく我慢してろ。
The doctor was coming. The doctor was coming. Now, how was he going to ask for help, and how was he going to get away from his captors? A plethora of thoughts began swirling through his
分
mind.
かってると思う。お医者に余計なことは言うなよ。俺たちも別にお前に乱暴がしたいわけ。そりゃ分かってるよな。
Yoshiki Inugai nodded with feigning pain and obedience. His expectations and the enemy's expectations. Whether they doubted he was faking his illness or not, they knew what his goal was and would try to stop it. His stomach contracted from the stress of this gambit, making it seem like his stomach was really starting to hurt. No, it really was. There was no reason to panic. If he failed his approach to the doctor, there was nothing to lose. If there was something to lose, it was this method of faking an illness to get in touch with the doctor. If he could think of any other methods from here on out, it wasn't much. But at the present, this was the easiest and most dramatic way he could think of. The more he thought about it, the more it looked like this was his first and last gambit. Eventually, he heard the sound of a car approaching once again. The sound of the car doors being hurriedly opened and shut. Sounds of several footsteps approaching. A young man in a white medical coat. He acknowledged the boy. As he acknowledged the boy, a suspicious look showed itself on his face.
彼は村の子じゃありませんね。
Captors didn't respond. From the looks of it, the young doctor had realized that this was an abnormal situation. One of the captors talked threateningly.
先生には関係のないことです。
For a while, the doctor and the captors silently glared at one another. However, unable to stand the sight of the boy continuing to suffer, the doctor, as the captors had hoped, didn't press any further.
その古い手術跡というのが何の手術でしたか。
そりゃわからない。
本当は診療所に連れ帰るべきなんですが。
先生、そりゃさすがにちょっと。
The doctor said he wanted to bring the boy back to the clinic, but the captors simply silently shook their heads at the notion. It was a fleeting hope, but it was only natural that the captors would refuse. At that moment, his eyes met with the doctor's. Seeing that the boy's painful state was abnormal, the doctor suspected it was a serious illness.
大丈夫ですか。私は医者です。この手術跡はいつ頃のものですか。
去年の冬に事故で。
事故。そうですか。参ったな。
Couldn't let the doctor figure out that he was faking it here. He had to somehow figure out a way to keep this all going and tell the doctor that he was being confined and needed help.
患部を少し触りますよ。痛むところがあったら言って。
Seeing that it was extremely painful, the doctor crossed his arms and began to ponder. He had to somehow get himself to a hospital. To Toshiki, a new guy, faking this illness was the performance of a lifetime. Damn, dude. Toshiki is fucking killing it, man. How old is Toshiki? Toshiki came up with the craziest plan.
皆さんもご苦労さんなことです。お暑いでしょうが、せいぜい頑張ってください。不法投棄のダンプが現れたらすぐにご連絡ください。急行いたしますのでね。
ご協力感謝します。どうぞ。
A gap wide enough for a single car was opened up in the barricade. Oishi, showing his gratitude or perhaps a threatening attitude, with a short beep on the horn, rolled the car forward through the checkpoint. This time my appearance was the very embodiment of the word suspicious. Baseball cap, a mask, and sunglasses. On top of that, even though it was sweltering, I was wearing a hoodie. Any respectable police officer would be loath to not stop me for questioning. I had meant to be overcautious, knowing full well that my face was known, but it might have been already too late for that to have any use. Using that as an excuse, I doffed at the unbearably hot hoodie and windbreaker, ripped off the mask and hat and threw them on the seat behind me.
ありゃいいんですか
こんな小細工したところでどうせ割れているでしょうから。
そりゃまあそうでしょうな。
Uishi, probably thinking that my unexpected behavior was funny, continued to laugh. Beautiful and pristine scenery of Hinamizawa spread out before me. The village itself would have been quite beautiful if it weren't for the complicated circumstances surrounding it at the moment. I would absolutely love to take Yuki here for a drive one day. Come to think of it, I didn't get a chance to call her last night. Played around with the idea in my head. But in reality, this village wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I had heard everything at the prefectural headquarters. At the very heart of this village, the intelligence network at the three families wielded was, due to blood ties and regional relationships, unbelievably well organized. Their net spread not just around Hinamizawa itself, but encapsulated the entirety of the city of Shishibone as well. When I first heard that, somewhere in the recesses of my mind, I didn't take it completely seriously. How could a local organization out in the boonies here have something so grandiose? I couldn't deny that somewhere in the back of my mind, I had ridiculed the thought. But not only were they really threatening the minister, but they had demonstrated they had complete grasp on our movements, which were supposed to be top secret. They were almost like a secret police that controlled the small Eastern European country, like in some spy novel. The villagers wouldn't bat an eye at getting their hands dirty if it meant fighting the dam project. I also heard something like that at the prefectural headquarters. Now that you mention it, when I first arrived here, Uishi said that this place was a war zone, didn't he? Residents of this village were, at the same time, freedom fighters. Although by definition they were no different than guerrillas or militia. They weren't protected by the Jiva Convention, but they also didn't have to adhere to those rules either. This place was more of a quagmire than a legitimate battlefield. A secret war was unfolding. I could drive along because Oishi was with me, but if I was to leave this car for even something as trivial as looking for a vending machine, there was a chance I wouldn't return. Even though a single shot hadn't been fired, this was a battlefield. No, the reason why bullets weren't flying was simply because it was hard for a civilian to obtain a gun in Japan. They were probably just equipped with weapons other than guns that were easier to obtain. That's why Oishi was wearing less stab-proof vest, wasn't he? Or wasn't it?
Akasaka-san.
Fact that I was apprehensive, of course, was of course picked up upon by Oishi. Jesus, I can't read today. If he already figured it out, there was no point in trying to deny or hide
も
it.
ちろんです。敵の本拠地にたった2人で乗り込んでいるんで、この人数では万一の時が不安です。
万一の時
Something I'm like,
大丈夫ですよ。
この村の人間すべてが全員が口裏を合わせれば、この村で白昼堂々殺人が起こっても証拠一つ残らん、そういうところだと聞いていますよ。
yeah, like that's exactly what I'm talking about right there. This right here. This was the ironclad rule of not barging into a Yakuza office alone was about. There wasn't a neutral party involved. That area was bound by the laws of common sense. If something happened, you wouldn't be able to prove it, and there wasn't anybody who would take your side. It was pretty much the definition of poking the bear.
南沢地区へ向かうと同僚に言い残してますしね。万一の時は無線機もありますし。赤坂さんが怖がってるほどね。そう簡単にはまあ、もちろん油断をしないに越したことはありませんがね。赤坂さん、緊張し、前にご一緒してた時の方がリラックスし、な。
Laughing it off, Uishi thumped his chest and grinned as if to say I could depend on him.
まあ、本当にやばく、桜の大門にはこいつがありますからね。
Uishi made a motion by flicking at his index finger. It was undoubtedly the image of a
役に
gun.
立ちますか？
撃った後の後始末云々が怖くなければ、実に心強いですよ。
The officer's gun was only for show. If you really wanted to fire it, there were quite a number of stipulations, and you had to be prepared for the long probationary period afterwards. That definitely wasn't worth it. So even if an officer did unholster his gun, there wasn't one who actually wanted to pull the trigger.
これ、
なあ、
撃ったことは
ありますよ。訓練で。
そりゃそうでし
なら大石さんにはあるんですか？
私です。ね、まさかあるわけないじゃないですか。
What's this? I thought he was laughing at me because he had experience. The two of us laughed together.
銃口を向けたこともありません。銃口を向けられたことなら何度銃口を覗かされるだけで寿命が3年は縮むな。
Even if he had never fired a gun before, you couldn't even begin to compare the amount of experience Oishi had over me. At times like this, I could only marvel again at how reliable Oishi seemed.
そういえば日の高いうちにこっちには来たくでも車道はここを抜ける以外ないし。赤坂さん、念のため
どうしたんです？
冷房がうるさいから聞こえないかな。切りますよ。窓を開けてみてください。
I could hear angry yelling coming from far away. At that moment, the forest gave way on either side of us, and our view expanded suddenly. And there could be seen the Hinamizawa Dam construction grounds, the very front line for Hinamizawa Village. The crackling blare of someone's voice sounded over an enormous loudspeaker. The roar of angry voices continued to rumble. The incredible volume had become a veritable? That's how you pronounce that, probably. A veritable sound cannon. What does veritable mean? Spewing out its ammunition. The prefab... I like, even context clues I don't know. Is that like basically had become a like it feels like basically would fit around there somewhere. Like it just made it basically a sound cannon spewing out its ammunition, or a veritable, I don't know. The prefabricated site office was surrounded by two sets of high fences that, laced with barbed wire. Lined up in front of those fences were riot police and their vehicles, and surrounding it all were the villagers. They howled out their protests against the dam as a single entity.
今日は少ないですね。ついてます。
少ないんですか。
ええ。多い時だと道路までいっぱいになります。うちうち車も通れません。
At first, due to their overwhelming intensity, it looked to me like there were more people than there actually was, but upon closer inspection, there were at most 50 to 70 of them. But the 6 or 7 propaganda trucks lined up looked like they belonged to a band of thugs and were a strange enough sight. The villagers were also wearing helmets and bandanas, as well as covering their faces with masks, adding to the oddity of it all. The propaganda trucks, after braying their chorus, had their volume turned up even higher and began to flood the area with sutras. To say that the noise was downright violent wouldn't be an understatement. From this distance, it was still loud. The glass in the office was probably rattling from the noise.
あれをガンガンやられるとたまんないんですよね。昨日の連中全員耳栓してて、それでも耳がおかしくなるそうです。気の毒な。
騒音規制でなんとかできないんですか。
うちの県にはそれにほら、宗教活動規制でき、連中も頭いいんです。
Is I think what Oishi said. Actually, no matter how tightly the window was shut, the booming sound of the sutra still filled the car. I couldn't even hear what Oishi, who was sitting right next to me, was saying. As the car approached the line of propaganda trucks, the blare became difficult to bear. It wasn't enough just to plug my ears with my fingers. I had to hold my head to keep my skull from splitting apart. If I hadn't seen this terrifying energy sooner, I would have probably understood the Hinamizo. If I had seen this terrifying energy sooner, I would have probably understood what Hinamizawa village was much quicker. Now I knew. They wouldn't blink an eye at sacrificing themselves in order to protect their hometown. So goddamn noisy. Shut up, shut up, shut up. My head throbbed and felt like it was going to split apart. My eardrums crackled, and on top of it all, I felt like I was going to throw up. With the road crowded with the throng of squatters, the propaganda trucks, and the riot police's vehicles, it was in no way easy to get by. Even if you tried to shoo the squatters with the car horn, they were also wearing earplugs, oblivious to the noises of the from the outside world, and wouldn't easily move. The car could only inch forward at a snail's pace. Even then, the car eventually got through, starting to leave the tumultuous noise behind. There's a lot of new words in this one. I remember there was an older person who didn't exactly mince words. That guy Oishi had called old man.
第一国あそこのプレハブの中でイライラしながら仕事をなさってるんお気の毒なこと。
あれが毎日ではたまったものではないでしょう。
耐えかねてやめちゃう人が後を絶ちません。まあその度にお給金がアップし
Even having to deal with all that noise and hostility, they still made a wage that Oishi found enviable. A group of squatters were in the way of the car. Oishi, sufficiently annoyed, laid into the horn, but there was no indication that they were moving anytime soon. In this din, could they not even hear a car horn? Or did they hear it and were being malicious? If there were any riot police nearby, they would have made the people move, but it just so happened there weren't any around here. Oishi opened up the door. The hot air and even more of the heated roar of the crowd spilled into the car. Oishi said something as he grinned widely, but I couldn't hear what it was. He was getting them to move. Something like that? He stepped out of the car and closed the door. The din faded slightly. He stared blankly as Oishi headed towards the group and started some sort of conversation. Maybe we'd find the minister's grandson at Texuda. At the very least, I wanted to find him there. Find him and slip him the cursed bonds of this incomprehensible village. But only pray. That moment, a shadow suddenly cast over me. Somebody was standing right outside the passenger side window, blocking the sunlight. Rika. Rika? Hi, Rika. All right, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. I kind of guessed that. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed today's episode, please hit the like button. I really appreciate it. Also subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'll probably go to bed. This is a good. I like ending on a cliffhanger because it makes me want to come back and kind of continue playing the game. Because I'm gonna end it kind of right here with you guys. So that'll be the end of this session. On my next day off, which is in just a couple of days, because I just got converted. What I'll do is I'll put even more backlog into it. But for right now, this will be just the end, just a 2-episode thing here. Let me know what you guys think. I'm sure you guys will probably tell me on the first one, but if you guys like this kind of backlog thing, I can do like 3 or 4 episodes in one sitting. Just do like 3 or 4 hours worth of this game and just kind of get it done with. I feel like I'm almost finished with it, just because when I look at, like I said before, when I look at the achievements, there's not too many achievements to get, which leads me to believe this is a shorter game than I think. Rika's here, so that's interesting. I think that we're gonna die here. Well, no, because we can't, because we're Tomitaki-san. We're Tomitaki-san. That's interesting. Rika's gonna say something like, "Akaska-kun, you should have went back to Tokyo." I can see it in her face. She's gonna say something like that. And then what's gonna happen is they're gonna move on Oishi, and we're gonna have to somehow like get in the car and like run them over or some shit. And like that's gonna be like the intense scene. And then I'm guessing that that mayor guy, the kid's grandson, we're gonna pull up right as he's trying to escape and like rescue him. But then I don't know how we're gonna get back, because this is like the road back, so I don't know. But Rika's here. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. I don't really have too many theories as far as like what's going on, other than everybody's in on it and people are demons. And that's been my theory since the beginning. So we'll see where this goes. I'm sure this is only going to give me more questions towards the end as to why. That's another thing, is like Rika is the only one that seems to no, but it's weird. It's weird because every story is different. Every question arc has been different. So I can't trust that this one is in any way related to the other episodes, just because all of them have been so vastly different with like minor changes. Well, I don't know about minor changes, but major changes in one direction. So I don't know. And this one's also in the past. It's like an arc in the past, which is weird. I don't think we'll ever play Keiichi. I think we're like too far into the game that we're gonna like if they transfer over to Keiichi at some point, it's gonna be jarring. So I feel like we're gonna spend the whole game as Tomitaki-san. This is like the origin story of Tomitaki. And then the next one we're gonna play as Shion and finally get like a crap ton of answers, because I feel like Shion's in the thick of it. Or Shion's a little bit in the thick of it. So I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, I'm gonna talk forever. I always talk forever if I never stop myself. So I'm gonna stop myself right now. I hope to see you guys in the next episode, whenever that may be. And Rika is staring directly into my soul. Have a wonderful rest of your day, guys. Peace.